If you've ever been stung by the pain of betrayal from someone you loved, this story might be for you. I'm Josh with eDesk Stories, your home for the juiciest stories and the hottest tea. Today's installment is a long one, but it's well worth the listen. The original poster wants to know,
am I wrong for holding my sister's actions against her after this? I was only 8 years old when my biological dad, James, passed away. My memories of those early years are mostly a blur, just flashes of a warm smile, a comforting embrace, and the scent of my dad's cologne. He was everything to me, but life dealt him a cruel hand. When he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, he knew his time with me was limited. But even as his health declined, his focus never wavered from securing my future. My dad had grown up in the foster care system, bouncing from one home to another, never quite finding the stability or love that a child needs. He was determined that I wouldn't suffer the same fate. With the help of social workers, he began searching for the perfect family to take me in, one that would love me as their own. That's when he found the Andersons. My adoptive mom was a nurse at the hospital where my dad went for therapy. They had long talks about his diagnosis and about me and what would happen to me after my dad's death. The Andersons were everything my dad hoped for. They had 3 children of their own: Emily, the eldest, who was 6 years older than me, Daniel, who was 4 years older, and Grace, who was just 2 years older. They lived in a cozy suburban home with a white picket fence, a large backyard, and a warm, welcoming atmosphere. From the moment my dad met them, he knew they were the right choice. But the Andersons did more than just agree to adopt me. Understanding the bond between me and my dad, they invited him to live with them during his final months. It was a unique arrangement, but it worked beautifully. My dad became a part of their family, and in return, he was able to spend his remaining time close to me, knowing that I would be in good hands after he was gone. During those months, my dad made a series of videos and wrote letters for me, messages that he hoped would guide me through life even after he was no longer there to do so in person. In these videos, he spoke about life, love, loss, and the importance of family. He shared stories from his own life, offered advice, and expressed his hopes and dreams for my future. These letters and videos became my most treasured possessions, a sacred connection to my past and a way to keep his memory alive. When my dad passed away, I officially became a part of the Anderson family. They loved me as one of their own, and I quickly adapted to my new life. But while I cherished my adoptive family, I never forgot about my biological father. As I grew up, I did my best to balance my love for both families. I adored my adoptive siblings, Emily, Daniel, and Grace, and we shared countless happy memories together. By the time I was 19, I had adjusted seamlessly to life with the Andersons. I had just finished my first year of college, and although the transition had been challenging, I was excited about the future. My adoptive parents had been incredibly supportive, and my siblings were my closest friends. Still, my connection to my biological father remained strong. I often revisited the letters and videos he had left me, finding comfort and guidance in his words. It was the spring of my freshman year when I first noticed something was wrong. I had come home for a brief visit and decided to go through the box where I kept all of my father's letters and videos. To my dismay, I discovered that one of the letters was missing. At first, I thought I might have misplaced it. I searched my room from top to bottom, even checking with my adoptive parents to see if they had accidentally moved it while cleaning. They assured me that they hadn't touched my box and suggested that I might have left the letter at college. Still, something didn't feel right. I had always been meticulous about keeping those letters safe. How could I have lost one? A few days later, my parents reassured me that they had copies of all the letters and videos my dad had left. They had made copies because they had been afraid that I, as a child, would not have taken care of them, just in case something like this ever happened. While this brought me some relief, it didn't completely ease my mind. The idea that one of the original letters was missing felt like a violation, a crack in the precious link to my past. I tried to put the incident out of my mind and enjoy my time at home, but the missing letter lingered in the back of my thoughts. I knew I should be grateful that my parents had the foresight to make copies, but it wasn't the same. The originals were irreplaceable, carrying the weight of my dad's handwriting, the very paper that he had touched. The rest of my spring break passed uneventfully, and soon I was back at college diving into my studies. Life moved on, but the nagging sense of loss stayed with me. Christmas came, and with it, a much-anticipated trip home. I loved the holidays with my family, the warmth, the laughter, the traditions we had created together. But there was still a part of me that felt out of place. like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. One night after everyone had gone to bed, I decided to revisit the box. It had been months since I last checked, and I wanted to make sure everything was still there. I sifted through the letters, carefully reading each one before moving on to the videos. But as I counted the tapes, my heart sank. One of the videos was missing. Panic set in. I tore through my room, searching every nook and cranny. I even checked the attic, thinking that maybe it had somehow been moved there with the Christmas decorations. But no matter where I looked, the tape was nowhere to be found. Frustrated and on the verge of tears, I approached my parents the next morning. I explained what had happened, my voice trembling with anxiety. My adoptive parents exchanged a glance, their expression sympathetic but resigned.
Adam, we've talked about this.
My mom said gently.
We have copies of everything. It's not the end of the world.
But it's the original, I protested, my frustration boiling over. I can't just replace it with a copy, it's not the same.
We understand how much these things mean to you,
My dad added, his tone calm and soothing.
but you need to trust us when we say that nothing important has been lost. We have everything saved, just in case.
I felt a mix of gratitude and anger. I knew they were trying to help, but they didn't understand. How could they? These letters and videos were my last connection to my father, a connection that had been severed twice now. As I left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was too coincidental that both a letter and a video had gone missing within such a short period. And despite my parents' reassurances, my instincts told me that this wasn't just a matter of carelessness. I couldn't let go of the feeling that something more sinister was at play. The idea that someone might be deliberately taking my dad's letters and videos gnawed at me, and I couldn't rest until I got to the bottom of it. During my Christmas break, I hatched a plan. I purchased a small, discreet camera that could be hidden in my room without anyone noticing. I set it up on my bookshelf, carefully positioning it so that it had a clear view of the box where I kept my dad's letters and videos. For the next few days, I went about my usual holiday activities with my family, all the while keeping a close eye on the footage captured by the camera. At first, there was nothing unusual. My siblings and parents came and went, but no one seemed to pay any attention to the box. It wasn't until the day after Christmas that my worst fears were confirmed. I'd been out with some friends when I decided to check the footage from earlier in the day. As I watched, my heart dropped. There, on the screen, was Grace, my adoptive sister, sneaking into my room. She glanced around nervously before making her way to the box. I watched in shock as she carefully lifted the lid, reached in, and pulled out another letter. She didn't even hesitate before tearing it into pieces and stuffing the scraps into her pocket. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Grace was the last person I would have suspected. We had always been close, or so I had thought. But now, I was faced with undeniable evidence that she was the one who had been taking my letters and videos, destroying the only remaining connection I had to my dad. That evening, I confronted Grace. I waited until our parents were out of the house, not wanting to cause a scene in front of them. When she entered the living room, I played the footage on my phone. Grace's face turned pale as she realized what she was seeing.
Adam, I can explain.
She stammered, but I wasn't in the mood to listen. Why, Grace? Why would you do this? Grace looked down at her feet, unable to meet my eyes.
I just couldn't stand it anymore, Adam.
She confessed, her voice barely above a whisper.
You're always clinging to a past that none of us share. It feels like you're not really a part of this family, like you're stuck somewhere we can't reach.
Grace continued, her voice cracking.
And every time you pull out those letters or watch those videos, it's like you're choosing him over us. I know it's selfish, but I just wanted you to let go, to be here with us, with me.
Her words hit me like a freight train. I stood there speechless, trying to process what she was saying. She wasn't just jealous or resentful, she was hurt. But her hurt didn't justify what she had done. Those letters and videos were all I had left of my dad, and she had destroyed them without even trying to understand what they meant to me. I'm a part of this family, I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. But my dad is a part of me too. You can't just erase him from my life because it makes you uncomfortable. Grace's eyes welled up with tears.
I know that now, Adam. I'm so sorry, I don't know, I thought if I got rid of those things, you'd finally move on and maybe you'd see us as your real family.
I do see you as my family, I said, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. But my connection to my dad doesn't change that. You destroyed something irreplaceable to me, Grace. Something that helped me feel close to him even though he's gone. Do you have any idea what that means? She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks.
I didn't. Not really. I was so focused on what I was feeling that I didn't stop to think about how much those things meant to you. I'm so sorry, Adam.
I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was genuinely sorry and that she hadn't realized the gravity of what she was doing. But the damage was done, and no amount of apologies could bring back the letters and videos she had destroyed. Those were pieces of my dad that I would never get back, memories that would now remain incomplete. I don't know if I can forgive you for this, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. You took something from me that I can never replace, and I don't know how to move past that. Grace broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I felt a pang of guilt watching her, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I was too hurt, too angry. I turned and left the room, leaving her to cry alone. The days that followed were tense. Grace avoided me, and I did the same. Our parents noticed the shift in the atmosphere, but I didn't feel ready to tell them what had happened. I was still trying to process it myself. I kept thinking back to what Grace had said, that she felt like I wasn't really part of the family, that I was stuck in the past. It stung, but I couldn't deny that there was some truth to it. My dad's memory was a big part of who I was, and I did cling to those letters and videos as a way to keep him close. But did that really make me less of a brother, less of a son to the Andersons? I didn't know how to reconcile my feelings. I loved my adoptive family, but I also loved my dad. And now, the connection to him felt more fragile than ever. Every time I thought about the destroyed letters and videos, a wave of grief washed over me. It was like losing my dad all over again. A few days later, our parents sat me down. They could tell something was wrong and they wanted to help, but I wasn't sure how to explain. How could I tell them that Grace had destroyed the most precious things I owned? That she had taken away the last pieces of my dad? But I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. The weight of it was too much to bear alone. So, I told them everything. About the missing letters and videos, about the hidden camera, about Grace's confession. My mom gasped, covering her mouth with her hand, while my dad's face turned ashen. They were horrified, and their immediate reaction was to confront Grace, but I stopped them. I don't want to cause more trouble, I said quietly. I just needed you to know. I'm still trying to figure out how to deal with this, but I needed to tell you. My mom's eyes filled with tears.
Adam, I'm so sorry. I can't believe Grace would do something like this. We had no idea.
We'll talk to her.
My dad added, his voice firm.
This isn't something we can just ignore.
I nodded, though I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. Part of me wanted them to make Grace understand the pain she had caused, but another part of me just wanted to move on, to find a way to heal from this. That night, I heard them talking to Grace in the living room. Their voices were low, but I could make out the anger and disappointment in their tones. Grace's voice was softer, muffled by tears. I didn't listen in. I couldn't. It was too painful and I needed space from it all. The weeks that followed were a blur. Grace tried to apologize again, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. I needed time, and I didn't know if I would ever be ready to forgive her. My relationship with my adoptive parents was strained too. I knew they were trying to support me, but everything felt different now, like a crack had formed in our family that couldn't be mended. As the months passed, life returned to some semblance of normalcy. I threw myself into my studies, trying to distract myself from the lingering pain, but the hurt was always there, just beneath the surface. Then, as summer approached, I learned that Grace was graduating from college. Our parents were excited, planning a big celebration for her, but I couldn't muster the same enthusiasm. The wounds were still too fresh, and I wasn't sure if I could stand to sit through her graduation, pretending that everything was okay. When the invitation to her graduation party arrived, I felt a pit form in my stomach. How could I go and celebrate with her after what she had done? How could I smile and congratulate her when I was still grieving the loss of the letters and videos she had destroyed? I thought about it for days, torn between wanting to be there for my family and needing to protect myself from the pain. Finally, I made a decision. I couldn't go. I wasn't ready to forgive Grace, and I couldn't pretend that everything was fine. When I told my parents, they were disappointed, but they didn't push me. They understood that I needed time and space to heal. Grace, however, didn't take it well. She called me on video, her voice already choked with emotion.
You're really not coming?
She asked, her voice thick with hurt when she cornered me one evening. I can't, Grace, I said, trying to keep my tone calm. I'm not ready. What you did, it hurt me more than you can imagine. I need time. She looked down, biting her lip.
I thought we were getting past this. I thought maybe you could forgive me by now.
I don't know if I ever will, I admitted, feeling a pang of guilt. I want to, but it's going to take time. I'm sorry, Grace, but I just can't be there. She didn't say anything else. She just nodded and disconnected the call. I knew she was hurting too, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not yet. The day of Grace's graduation was bittersweet. I spent the day alone, trying not to think about the celebration happening without me. I knew I had made the right decision for myself, but that didn't make it any easier. As I sat in my empty dorm room, I reflected on everything that had happened. My life had been turned upside down by a betrayal I never saw coming, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. But even as I grieved the loss of the letters and videos, I realized something important. My dad's memory wasn't confined to those physical objects. He was still with me, in my heart, in my thoughts, in the lessons he had taught me. Grace might have destroyed the letters and videos, but she couldn't take away the love and memories I carried with me every day. In that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let this betrayal define me or my relationship with my family. I would take the time I needed to heal, but I wouldn't let the pain consume me. I would find a way to move forward, even if forgiveness wasn't possible right now. As the sun set on Grace's graduation day, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I knew that I could find a way to heal. My dad's memory would always be a part of me, and nothing could take that away. And one day, maybe I would be able to rebuild my relationship with Grace. But for now, I would focus on healing and finding my way back to the family that had given me so much, even in the face of such a deep betrayal. The weeks following Grace's graduation were a time of quiet reflection for me. I stayed away from home, took summer classes, and focused on my studies and giving myself the space I needed to heal. I knew that avoiding my family forever wasn't an option, but I also knew I wasn't ready to face them, especially Grace. During this time, I started seeing a therapist at my university. I hadn't considered therapy before, but after everything that had happened, I knew I needed help processing my emotions. Talking about the loss of my dad, the betrayal I felt, and the complicated dynamics with my adoptive family was difficult, but it was also a relief. My therapist helped me understand that it was okay to feel hurt, and that healing would take time. One thing that came up frequently in our sessions was the idea of forgiveness. Not just for Grace, but for myself. I had been carrying a lot of guilt about not being able to let go of the past and fully embrace my adoptive family. My therapist helped me see that it was okay to hold on to my dad's memory and that it didn't make me any less a part of the Anderson family. The two parts of my life could coexist, even if they were sometimes in conflict. As the end of summer approached, I knew I would have to decide on going home. My parents had been understanding about my absence from Grace's graduation, but they had made it clear that they wanted me to come home before the fall term started. They missed me, and despite everything, I missed them too. I knew that eventually I would have to face Grace and the rest of my family. With my therapist's guidance, I decided that I would go home, but I would set boundaries. I wasn't ready to forgive Grace, but I didn't want to cut her out of my life entirely. I would let my parents know that I needed time and space, and I hoped they would respect that. Returning home that summer was strange. The house felt both familiar and foreign, filled with memories that were now tinged with pain. My parents were overjoyed to see me, greeting me with warm hugs and concerned smiles. They didn't push me to talk about Grace, for which I was grateful. They understood that I needed to take things at my own pace. Grace, on the other hand, was more reserved. She kept her distance, which I appreciated, but I could feel her eyes on me whenever we were in the same room. There was an unspoken tension between us, a silent acknowledgement of the hurt that still lingered. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a routine. I spent time with my parents and occasionally hung out with Daniel and Emily, who were home for the summer as well. We didn't talk about what had happened, but they were supportive in their own way. They didn't pressure me to forgive Grace, but they made it clear that they were there for both of us. As the days passed, I started to feel more comfortable at home. The raw pain of the betrayal began to dull, though it was still there, just beneath the surface. I spent a lot of time thinking about my dad and the memories I still had of him. The letters and videos might have been gone, but the love and lessons he had given me were still very much alive. I realized that my connection to him was more than just physical objects. It was a part of who I was. One evening, as I was sitting on the back porch, Grace approached me. I hadn't been alone with her since I came home, and I could see the apprehension on her face. She sat down beside me, leaving a respectful distance between us.
Adam,
She began softly, her voice trembling slightly.
I know I've already apologized, but I want to say it again. I'm so sorry for what I did. I know I can't undo it, but I hope Someday we can find a way to move past this.
I looked out at the backyard, the familiar sight of our garden bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. I took a deep breath before speaking. I appreciate the apology, Grace, I said, my voice steady, but I'm not ready to move past it yet. What you did, it hurt me in a way that's hard to explain. Those letters and videos were the last connection I had to my dad, and now the originals, the ones he touched and felt, are gone. Sure, I have copies, but it's not the same, I tried to explain. Grace nodded, tears welling up in her eyes.
I know, and I hate myself for it. I didn't understand what they meant to you. I was selfish and I was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just want you to know that I'm sorry, truly.
We sat in silence for a while, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I wanted to forgive her, to move on and rebuild our relationship, but I wasn't sure if I could. The wound was still too fresh. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, I admitted, but I do want to find a way to move forward. We're family and I don't want to lose that, but it's going to take time, and I need you to respect that. Grace nodded again, wiping away a tear.
I understand. I'll give you as much time as you need. I hope one day we can be close again.
As the summer drew to a close, I found myself in a better place. I still hadn't forgiven Grace, but the anger and hurt had started to subside. My therapy sessions had helped me process my emotions, and I was beginning to accept that while I couldn't change the past, I could control how I responded to it. I decided to focus on the future and the relationships that mattered to me. My parents, who had been nothing but supportive throughout this entire ordeal, were still the loving, caring people they had always been. Daniel and Emily were also there for me, offering their quiet support without judgment. And even Grace, despite everything, was still my sister. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, I realized how much I had missed this, being with my family, sharing laughs and stories, and just feeling like I belonged. The tension that had once filled the house was slowly dissipating, replaced by a sense of understanding and healing. After dinner, I pulled Grace aside. She looked nervous, her eyes searching mine for any sign of what I was about to say. I want to try to move forward, I told her. I'm not saying everything's okay, and I'm not saying I've forgiven you completely, but I do want to rebuild our relationship slowly. Her eyes lit up with hope, and she nodded eagerly.
Thank you, Adam. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make things right.
It wasn't a perfect resolution, and I knew it would take time for us to truly heal, but it was a start, a new beginning for both of us. As I prepared to head back to college, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. My dad would always be a part of me, but I was ready to focus on the life I was building with the Andersons. My connection to both families didn't have to be a source of conflict. Instead, it could be a source of strength. In the end, I realized that my dad's greatest gift to me wasn't the letters or videos. It was the love and wisdom he had imparted in those few short years. That love had guided me through the darkest times, and it would continue to guide me as I navigated the challenges of life. As I drove away from home that day, I felt a sense of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew that with time, understanding, and the support of my family, I could find a way to heal and move forward. And maybe, just maybe, I could find it in my heart to forgive Grace and rebuild the bond we once shared. But for now, I was content to take it one step at a time, knowing that I was on the path to healing and a brighter future. A month after returning to college, I received an unexpected package in the mail. It was from Grace. My heart pounded as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a letter, written in her familiar handwriting.
Adam, I know you said you needed time and space, and I'm trying to give you that. But there's something I've been working on that I wanted to share with you when you're ready. After everything that happened, I couldn't stop thinking about the letters and videos I destroyed. I know I can't replace them, but I wanted to do something to honor your dad's memory and to try to make amends. I've been going through old family photos and videos, and I've started putting together a scrapbook and a video montage for you. It's not the same as what you lost, but I hope it can be a way for you to remember your dad and the times we've all shared together as a family. I'm not expecting you to forgive me, but I wanted to do something to show you how much I regret what I did and how much you mean to me. Whenever you're ready, the scrapbook and video will be waiting for you. Love, Grace.
Tears filled my eyes as I read her words. I wasn't ready to fully forgive her, but this gesture touched me in a way I hadn't expected. It showed me that Grace truly understood the gravity of what she had done and was making a genuine effort to make amends. I didn't reach out to her right away. I needed time to process everything. Grace's letter stayed on my desk for a few days, the weight of her words heavy in my mind. I was touched by her effort, yet still hesitant to accept it. The pain of losing those letters and videos was a scar that would take time to heal. But the gesture reminded me that healing wasn't just about what I had lost, it was also about what I still had, my family, flawed as we all were. After some contemplation, I decided to open up to my therapist about the letter and the scrapbook Grace had offered. We discussed the possibility of accepting her gesture as part of the healing process, not as a replacement for what was lost, but as a way to bridge the gap between the past and the present. I knew that forgiving Grace wouldn't happen overnight, and I wasn't going to force it. But the letter made me realize that maybe forgiveness didn't have to be an all-or-nothing thing. Maybe it could happen in small steps, over time. A week after receiving the letter, I finally called Grace. My hand shook as I dialed her number, and my heart raced as I waited for her to pick up.
Adam?
Her voice was cautious, like she didn't know what to expect. "Hey, Grace," I said, taking a deep breath. "I got your letter." There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could almost hear her holding her breath.
I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk.
She finally said. "I wasn't sure either," I admitted, "but I've been thinking about it, and I wanted to say thank you. I know it doesn't change what happened, but the fact that you're trying, it means something." Grace exhaled, and I could hear the relief in her voice.
I'm really glad you feel that way, Adam. I know I messed up, and I know it's going to take time, but I want to do whatever I can to make it right.
"I'm not ready to forgive you completely," I said, feeling the need to be honest. "But I think I'd like to see the scrapbook and the video you made,"
I understand.
she said softly.
And whenever you're ready, I'll be here.
A few weeks later, I went home for the weekend to see the scrapbook and video Grace had put together. My parents seemed relieved that we were making progress, though they didn't pry. They respected my need for space and let me and Grace handle things at our own pace. When I arrived home, Grace was waiting for me in the living room, the scrapbook and a laptop on the coffee table. She looked nervous, but there was also a glimmer of hope in her eyes.
Hey.
She said, giving me a tentative smile. "Hey," I replied, sitting down beside her. She handed me the scrapbook first. It was a thick, leather-bound book filled with photos of our family over the years. As I flipped through the pages, I saw pictures of us as kids, family vacations, birthdays, and holidays, but mixed in with those were photos of my dad, photos I had never seen before. Grace had included pictures from the time he lived with us, moments I didn't even remember. Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at the images. She had captured the essence of both my dad and the family we had become after his passing. It was a beautiful tribute, not just to him, but to the life we had built together. Next, Grace played the video. It was a montage of clips, some from old family videos, others from recent times, set to music that I knew my dad loved. The video showed him teaching me how to ride a bike, reading bedtime stories, and even just sitting with me on the porch. Interspersed with these were clips of me growing up, with my adoptive parents, with Grace, Daniel, and Emily. It was a timeline of my life, showing how I had been shaped by both my biological father and my adoptive family. As the video ended, I wiped away the tears that had streamed down my face. I was overwhelmed by the emotions it had stirred: grief, love, gratitude, and a deep sense of connection to both my dad and my family. "Grace, this is beautiful," I said, my voice thick with emotion. She looked at me, her own eyes glistening with tears.
I just wanted to show you that even though I made a terrible mistake, I do care about you. And I care about your dad's memory too.
I nodded, still processing everything. "I know it's going to take time, but I want us to work on this. I want to rebuild our relationship." Grace smiled, a small, hopeful smile. "I'd like that too." The weeks and months that followed were a time of gradual healing. Grace and I started spending more time together, slowly rebuilding our relationship. We didn't avoid the topic of what had happened, but we also didn't let it define every interaction. We focused on creating new memories, while also honoring the ones I had lost. I continued therapy, which helped me navigate the complex emotions that still lingered. I learned that forgiveness wasn't a destination, but a journey, one that I was taking one step at a time, and each step brought me a little closer to letting go of the anger and hurt. Grace's effort to make amends didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the family. My parents and siblings were supportive, giving us the space we needed to heal at our own pace. There were still moments of tension, but they were becoming less frequent. The atmosphere at home was lighter, more hopeful. One day, After we had spent the afternoon looking through the scrapbook together, Grace turned to me and said,
Adam, I know I've said it before, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for what I did. I know I can't make it up to you, but I promise I'll never take your memories for granted again.
I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. For the first time, I felt a sense of closure, like a chapter of my life was finally coming to an end. I believe you, Grace, I said softly, and I'm starting to forgive you. It's not complete yet, but I'm getting there. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears.
That's all I could ask for.
By the time I graduated from college, I felt like a new chapter of my life was beginning. The pain of the past had dulled, replaced by a sense of peace and acceptance. I would always carry the memory of my dad with me, but I was also ready to fully embrace the family that had taken me in and loved me as their own. Grace and I had come a long way. We weren't the same as we were before the betrayal, but in some ways our relationship was stronger. We had faced something incredibly difficult together and come out the other side with a deeper understanding of each other. As I stood with my family at my graduation, I felt a surge of gratitude. I looked at my parents, at Daniel and Emily, and then at Grace. I realized that while I had lost something precious, I had also gained something invaluable, a family that had stood by me even when things were at their worst. Later that evening, as we celebrated my graduation, Grace pulled me aside. She handed me a small box wrapped in simple paper. "What's this?" I asked, curious.
Just something I wanted you to have.
She said, smiling. I unwrapped the box and opened it to find a small pendant inside. It was engraved with the initials of my dad's name on one side and the initials of my adoptive family on the other.
I wanted you to have something that represents both parts of your life.
Grace explained.
A way to keep them close together.
I felt a lump in my throat as I looked at the locket. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. "Thank you, Grace," I said, my voice choked with emotion. This means a lot." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes.
You're welcome, Adam. I'm just glad we're here together.
As I put the pendant around my neck, I felt a sense of completeness that I hadn't felt in a long time. The road to forgiveness had been long and difficult, but I had finally reached a place where I could begin to let go of the past and fully embrace the future. And as I stood there, surrounded by my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because in the end, it wasn't just about the memories we held onto, it was about the love and strength we found in each other. And that, I realized, was something worth fighting for.
We typically don't share stories that are this long, but this one was well worth the read. We thought it might resonate with people who struggle with family, apologies, or moving on after a disagreement. There's a particular art to a good apology, and Grace nailed it in this story. But we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily stories.